Welcome to AFSPA Talks, a production of the American Foreign Service Protective Association with Chief Operating Officer Kyle Longton. Be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast channel. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of AFSPA Talks. I'm Kyle Longton, and with me this month is
Adrienne Coleman-Seabrooks.
Adrienne. This is going to be our third episode in our month focused on ancillary products, and as it has been the last 2 weeks, I'm so glad to have you with us. So glad to have your expertise and look forward to it for the rest of the month. And today we're talking about two very important insurance products that may not be very well understood, long-term disability and critical illness. And I will mention briefly that we did an entire episode focused solely on critical illness when we launched the program last year. So, listener, if you are interested in a more comprehensive overview of that program, please go back in your feed. You'll find it there and you can learn all about it. But Adrienne, these, as I said before, these may not be the best understood products that we offer. Do you find that when you're talking with members?
We may think that we're familiar with these products just because of the name, but we may be wrong. Both were designed to provide financial protection in the event of a serious illness. I recently read in an article, Kyle, that in the American Journal of Public Health, that the leading cause of U.S. bankruptcies was due to medical expenses. So I think it's important to discuss today how coverage differs, but also how they are similar by providing valuable financial security.
It's, I think, an important thing for us to focus on, that we're talking about some additional protections you can have, because even with all the reforms in health insurance in recent years, it's astounding that we're still seeing the leading cause of U.S. bankruptcies are medical expenses.
I agree.
Well, we've got a great guest to talk to us today, and maybe you could introduce them.
Sure. Great to have one of our partners and longtime friends of AFSPA, Nina Mateus, has more than 20 years of experience with Prudential's Group Insurance Division. In her current role as an account executive for Prudential's Group Association and Affinity Services, she is responsible for the relationship management and implementation of association accounts for various life insurance, disability insurance, and other products such as critical illness. Nina is a subject matter expert in group insurance benefits, consulting on benefit plans, working to ensure customer and member satisfaction, and focusing on overall relationships. Nina's career at Prudential has included various positions in claim and account management, including time as a regional account director in both the premier and national account segments. Her understanding of claim processes and members' needs is both wide and deep. A magna cum laude graduate of Seton Hall University, Nina has a life and health license and is based at the Prudential offices in Newark, New Jersey. On that note, I would like to welcome Nina to today's podcast.
Thanks so much, Kyle and Adrienne. I'm super happy to be here today.
We are delighted to have you, and can't thank you enough for joining us once again to talk to us and educate us as well as our listeners about these two insurances. So as we noted, that many of our listeners and members are aware of these plans, but they haven't maybe delved into the differences and understand exactly what disability insurance offers versus critical illness insurance. So would you be able to start with just a general explanation of what each plan offers?
Absolutely. I'll just take a step back and say I really commend you for doing this podcast, because there does tend to be some confusion out there in the marketplace. And, every now and then folks think there's an overlap. They feel they're adequately protected if they have one, but not the other. But today hopefully will help educate members and potential members on understanding why it's really important to protect yourself by having both. As Adrienne touched upon, both disability and critical illness are intended to protect your financial stability, and also protect your future from expenses of illness or injury. The main distinction is in the distribution of funds for disability insurance versus critical illness and what each plan covers. Disability insurance protects your income. So if you're prevented from working for an extensive period of time due to a serious illness or injury, disability is intended to supplement your day-to-day cost of living and your paycheck. Most plans will pay a percentage of your monthly salary up to the maximum length of the plan's benefit period and/or until you're medically cleared to return to work. Critical illness, on the other hand, pays a lump sum benefit. So that's where I mentioned, number one, the distinction in how the benefits and the proceeds are paid. While disability will protect you on a monthly basis, critical illness is a lump sum benefit if you're medically diagnosed with specific predefined critical medical conditions. And those include things like a heart attack, stroke, and cancer. These predetermined conditions can vary from plan to plan, so it's really important to consult with your AFSPA benefits team and also to review all the marketing materials and just plan brochure and details that are available to you.
And I think that's very important. And as you noted with critical illness, it's specific illnesses, whereas disability will step in whenever you're medically certified unable to work. And that's an important thing for our listeners to keep in mind as well. Now, we've had questions come up in the past from people who are interested in these policies, but they may be looking at it the wrong time. So if I can give you an example, let's say a member is given a diagnosis of cancer that will involve surgery and other treatments requiring a considerable amount of leave from work. Will they be able, following that diagnosis, to apply for disability or for critical illness policy, assuming that cancer would be covered under those policies?
That's a really great question, and I can't underscore enough how important it is for members to understand that most likely, in that example, Kyle, members wouldn't be covered for disability or critical illness. The majority of disability plans and critical illness plans, number one, require medical underwriting during the time of enrollment to review your health history, which typically looks back about 5 to 7 years on average, to determine whether you're insurable as a member. And if you have some pre-existing conditions, oftentimes you will not be approved for coverage. Beyond, quite honestly, any guaranteed issue amount, for example, critical illness, there are some low-level amounts that you can and should enroll for without having to furnish medical evidence. But another important distinction for both plans is they may also contain pre-existing condition exclusions and clauses that require an initial diagnosis while covered under the policy. So there's the ability to enroll or not to enroll, depending on what conditions you may have. And then there could also be an exclusion, even if you are covered, if you had treatment or a condition within certain periods prior to your disabling event. All of these requirements are how an insurance company determines risk. If you're already diagnosed or in an active stage of a disease, unfortunately, it's likely you'll be declined for the coverage. And critical illness also requires that any covered illness be diagnosed after the coverage is in force. That's pretty much an industry standard, but it's super important to know that because oftentimes we don't think of needing these types of products because they tend to be ancillary, as Kyle mentioned, until we're not feeling well. And sadly, that tends to be too late. So it's very critical that you consider these plans and understand them while you're healthy.
Yep. And another important distinction between these plans and what we think of when we think of medical coverage, that there are pre-existing condition limitations, whereas those don't exist in health insurance anymore. So please be thinking about these, as a prevention and a support should that ever arise. Hopefully it never does for any of us, but statistics tell us differently. And we've seen, honestly, in our own population, in our foreign service benefit plan, and I've mentioned this in some past podcasts, that we have seen an uptick in cancer and even heart disease diagnoses among our membership in recent years, and we're unfortunately seeing those diagnoses at later stages. Some of that's due to delayed care as a result of the pandemic and so forth. And we may think that's why we have health insurance. It's going to cover the doctor's visits, it's going to cover the treatments and so forth. But it's not going to cover everything, Nina, and you've touched on this already, but I wonder if we can go into a little bit more depth about why someone would be interested in or need this additional coverage.
Absolutely. And, I'll say that across our board, also in our Prudential group insurance block, cancer and heart disease do tend to be on the rise. Oftentimes, there's a speculation where coming out of the pandemic, as you pointed out, it could be due to just inability to treat properly. There are various reasons for that, I'm sure, but as you mentioned, serious illnesses, they require extensive medical care and treatment. So even with the fabulous health plan afforded to your members on the medical side, there's out-of-pocket costs. We're all going to incur them. Health insurance is on the rise, and costs can not only cause extensive leave from work, but they quickly exceed what that medical coverage is going to cover. So things to really think about are, what happens if you exhaust your employer paid leave and have to default to leave without pay? Do you have enough in your savings? Do you want to exhaust everything you have in your savings? It's also important to understand that, medical and health insurance only go so far to cover the specific treatment of a serious illness. How are you going to pay for the expenses related to your condition that medical insurance just doesn't cover? Even with great health insurance, as I mentioned, the out-of-pocket and non-medical expenses, deductibles, co-pays, over-the-counter medications, home accommodations, and just your day-to-day daily expenses of living can really cause a financial strain. And just to underscore that, guys, I'd love to just give you a few statistics.
Please.
Not to be scare tactics either, but just to point out the grim reality that some people face, and they don't think about it until, unfortunately, it's too late and you're in the peril of dealing with a very severe condition. Here's one statistic. A report by Salary Finance reveals that 42% of working Americans have outstanding medical debt, and 54% of people with medical debt, are in default on that. So think about having to pay your daily expenses, already being in debt, and then having defaulted on that. There's long-term credit implications to that have ramifications beyond your condition. Based on a joint Kaiser Permanente and New York Times survey, a staggering 63% of Americans have exhausted the majority of their savings to pay bills. So again, you work so hard to have savings to enjoy your quality of life. Imagine having to go through more than half of that due to an unforeseen condition. Per the Bureau of Economic Analysis, overall consumer prices have rarely risen faster than healthcare inflation, which is something I think we can all relate to in some way, shape, or form. And that's from doctor visits to surgeries and prescription drugs. And it's expected to rise at a rate of 2 to 3% every year. So while 2 to 3% may not seem giant, consider that year over year and the impact that can have. According to the American Heart Association, 48% of Americans have some form of cardiovascular disease, and nearly 40% of men and women will develop cancer per the American Cancer Society. So again, I say none of these are meant to leave anybody frightened or scared, but hopefully you're absorbing the genuine need to have supplemental ancillary insurance to protect you for the unforeseen.
Yeah, and these are a wake-up call for me, and I'm sure for many of our listeners, about that need and the reason, the need to consider additional protection. We health insurance, obviously, we're familiar with that. Most of us have it, and we think that'll cover our medical expenses. But you mentioned deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance, and so forth. So disability and critical illness insurance can be used to help with those out-of-pocket medical costs. And even beyond that, if we need home health care and something like that, is that right? We can use this for medical expenses. Does it go beyond that?
Yeah, the beauty about these two products, disability and critical illness, is we don't police what you're doing with the benefit payments. So you can use it to cover costs for anything you need, including non-medical expenses. It's a great feature because there are no restrictions, so you don't have to account for how you're spending the benefit once you receive it. You decide what your needs are, and the benefit is yours to choose as you see fit.
Okay, and so what are some of in your experience, what are some examples of non-medical expenses that people have used their benefit for?
So that's a really good question, and really it runs the gamut, but you can use the funds. We've seen individuals use it to pay mortgage and rent, car payments, your general utility bills, or all the bills that go to your house. But Then think of your day-to-day needs: groceries, tuition, child, elder care. Maybe you need home modifications because of your disability, or just some additional help around the house because you can't do it all yourself. I've even seen people use it to pay for takeout food or Uber Eats gift cards that they can use at a later date. And those are just a few examples because, again, it truly is however you see fit based on where your biggest income gap loss is.
So I'm curious about if there are other supports available under these coverage programs. The Foreign Service Benefit Plan has a variety of support programs like a Pinnacle Care Expert Second Opinion Service, our nurse care managers, and so forth to help people navigate and identify new treatment options. Do disability and critical illness offer additional benefits like this?
I'm not particularly aware of any kind of bells and whistles, if you will, tied to the disability plan. The disability plan, again, is solid, and it's, the main intent is it's giving you a portion of your income to replace, so you're not feeling a significant loss from not having a paycheck coming in. However, there may be additional features under the critical illness program, which I'll talk about. Specifically, the AFSPA plan has a few benefits to assist you in your treatment and recovery, and they're just added features offering additional monetary support to cover expenses how you see fit. The first is what we call the NCI benefit. And what that is, it's payable once during a covered member's lifetime. It's going to give you an additional $500 as a covered person if you seek evaluation or consultation at a National Cancer Institute, that's the NCI, sponsored cancer center for if and when you have a cancer diagnosis. It'll also pay you $250 for the transportation and lodging if you're receiving evaluation, consultation in that sponsored cancer center, if you have to travel more than 100 miles away from your primary residence. And that's really important. You want the best care for yourself or your covered member. And sometimes that care is not in your back, it's not sitting right in your backyard. So if you have to travel, this is intended to help with that. And again, use the money how you see fit. Maybe it's gas, lodging, obviously, which we've said. So there are just some additional bonuses. It doesn't feel like a whole lot, but it's something to help offset the cost. Absolutely.
And it can really come in handy, like you said, if you're looking for the very best treating your specific type of cancer, and they're not in your own backyard, they may be across the country, you've got at least a little help to get you there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, spot on, Kyle. And in addition to that, somebody may not have cancer, but may have another critical illness, and under the same premise of having to travel somewhere for treatment, there's also a transportation or travel benefit, and it covers just that, transportation expenses, and it gives you an additional payment for round-trip travel if you have to go to a hospital or medical facility, and your residence is more than 50-mile radius for your treatment. So if you've got to go more than 50 miles away to treat, you can get up to 50 cents per mile for non-commercial travel. And if you have to go into commercial travel, the actual charges would be covered up to $1,500 round trip. And this benefit is payable up to 6 times per calendar year for a covered person receiving treatment, because, theoretically, you're going to have to go back and forth for that treatment. So there are a few times that you can submit for that benefit.
And this is over and above the base benefit offered under critical illness.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
All of these are over and above. And as we're talking about critical illness and the features, and I'm going to share one more with you all in a moment, keep in mind, critical illness runs concurrent to long-term disability. So, if any of you have ever had a disability claim and you've had offsets on your plan because there are certain things that will reduce the benefit, critical illness is not one of them. So as you're receiving your LTD benefit, you can also be receiving the full critical illness benefits that you're eligible for based on your condition. And there's another benefit that's a lodging benefit. So, similar to transportation, similar to having to go to a NCI institute, you may have to travel somewhere for your treatment, and it requires you to stay overnight. So the benefit for lodging, which might be needed in connection with that treatment, will pay up to $60 per day for lodging that's necessary to stay in a hospital facility. Again, if you're traveling more than 50 miles from your primary residence, and it's payable for lodging within a 24-hour period before or after treatment, with the thought process being, you're probably not traveling too far. And so, the day before, if you have to stay, the day after, Prudential will pay up to $60 per day. And that will cover up to 60 days per calendar year for a covered person receiving treatment.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes those appointments start at 7 a.m. and getting there, even if it's only 60 miles away, requires a early morning. And so this is nice to be able to, one less stressor to be able to stay nearby the night before.
Exactly.
So you've helped make it clear how these benefits, both under the health insurance and critical illness, are aligned with each other and provide useful additional support as somebody might navigate a cancer or, as you've noted, another diagnosis. So let's say somebody's enrolled and they need to file a claim. Obviously, different plans are going to have different requirements and so forth, but I guess thinking of AFSPA's plans and thinking generally, can you give us a general overview of the process for filing a claim?
Absolutely. Most disability claims will require medical or your physician certification for the reason of the diagnosis, the expected duration if you're unable to work. It could involve the need to review medical records. And the claim reviewer will also contact your HR office to verify certain things like employment, salary, the date that you were effective for your disability coverage, and to secure the first day that you went on leave. If your plan has a waiting period, which would be the time frame between when you become disabled and when your benefits actually start, the reviewer will start that payment of your benefit once the waiting period's been exhausted. So in summary, think of disability, as I've mentioned, because it's month-to-month income replacement through the duration of the plan or through the duration of your condition. Sometimes we will need to continue to recertify as an insurance carrier your condition and how you're recovering. Critical illness, on the other hand, require medically certified proof of your diagnosis, including the date you were initially diagnosed, but that's usually all we need to confirm that it is a qualifying critical illness and to evaluate the plan and to release payment. So there's normally no need to undergo additional treatment, provide proof of expenses to receive your lump sum benefit. However, some receipts, especially because for some of those things that we just covered, the travel, the lodging, some of those receipts would be required to claim coverage for the additional benefits. And we will also work with your HR team similarly at the onset of claim, just to verify some of that basic information that happens on disability as well, employment, and the date that you were covered for critical illness, and then also what type of plan and what amount you may have enrolled in. So, for both, I always say it's really important to reference your plan and contact your plan administrator for details and also just for guidance. You're probably not thinking of or remembering what the claim process is when you're dealing with something that's just so catastrophic to your day-to-day living.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're here for. That's what Prudential's there for, or whatever other carrier you may have when it comes to those situations. So to summarize our discussion today, one more time, why should one strongly consider disability or critical illness insurance protection?
Thank you again. And, I think I'll reiterate what we've all been saying here, Kyle and Adrian, since the onset. Both help protect your financial future and offer support in tackling unexpected and often life-changing illnesses. Again, as I mentioned, they can run alongside each other. So if you have both, you're going to get both benefits if you qualify, and they're intended to help ease some of the burden so you can focus on your recovery. I mean, we all just want everybody to be well, to be productive in society. And some of these benefits help offer you great peace of mind as you're dealing with something that can oftentimes be life-altering. There are many specific reasons that hopefully we covered, but I'll reiterate to consider having both of them. Your medical bills. Let's make sure you don't have to exhaust your savings, emergency funds, or God forbid, file bankruptcy. Non-medical bills. You want to ensure that you and your family can survive financially while you focus on what's crucially important, which is getting better and recovering. And income protection. Make sure you have a safeguard in place in the event that you exhaust your employer-paid leave. It's especially important if you're new to federal service, because you might not have much accrued leave, and then what to do. And lastly, as you consider these, especially while you're healthy and listening to us today, family history. It's really worth investigating if you're genetically predisposed to a critical condition and getting ahead of it and adequately covering yourself.
I talked to a friend about that recently who had a genetic test and has been doing more preventive and screening measures than normally would be considered at that age. And I was sort of blown away that we've come so far in recent years at being able to detect things early and being able to look for them and know what we're looking for. So Nina, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise about these programs.
Thank you for having me. I love working with you. We are, Prudential and AFSPA, as you all said, we're friends to the AFSPA team and to the AFSPA population, both foreign and domestic. So thank you for having me, and thank you for just, listening to me, to everybody that's out there. It's insurance is not always something that sits top of mind. It may not be the most riveting thing, but it's so important. And I hope that everybody that listened was able to take something away and better understand and evaluate your coverage.
Absolutely. And Nina, we will absolutely have you back again very soon to talk about some of the other ways in which we partner. For full details about our disability and critical illness program, or to enroll, please visit afspa.org/AIP and click on the options for disability and critical illness, or call us at 202-833-4910. This has been AFSPA Talks, a production of the American Foreign Service Protective Association. All information offered in this podcast is meant to be educational. Should there be any discrepancy between information offered in this podcast and official plan documents for the Foreign Service Benefit Plan or other products offered by AFSPA, the policy provisions will prevail. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to AFSPA Talks to catch our next episode. Please rate and review us on your favorite podcast app and share feedback with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We'll see you next time.